The crystal champagne flute slipped from my fingers and shattered against the marble floor. 100 faces turned toward me at once. The cheerful buzz of conversation at the annual company gala died instantly. "I asked you a question, Miss Phoebe." Mrs. Adriana Reed's voice cut through the silence as she took another step toward me, her designer heels crunching over the broken glass. "My son Liam has been missing for 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days, and I believe you know exactly where he island." The company's founder and CEO, Maxwell Reed, set his drink down with deliberate slowness and began pushing through the stunned crowd toward his wife. "Adriana, please," he said, his voice calm but tight. "This isn't the place." "No," she shouted, her composed facade crumbling completely. "I saw her looking at Liam's photograph on your desk yesterday. She wasn't just looking, Max. She was trembling." "Mrs." Reed's eyes never left mine. "I've interviewed 68 private investigators. I've appeared on 32 news programs. I've spent millions searching, and all this time, the answer was right here." My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. The elegant ballroom of the Grand Harmony Hotel seemed to tilt sideways. 300 colleagues watched, paralyzed, as the company's beloved philanthropist power couple imploded before their eyes. "Security," Maxwell called over his shoulder, his expression darkening. Mrs. Reed grabbed my wrist, her nails digging half-moons into my skin. "Please," she whispered, desperation replacing her anger. "He's my only child. Is he alive?" The ballroom's double doors burst open as 2 security guards rushed in. Maxwell reached for his wife. "She's having an episode, gentlemen. Please escort her." He faked the conservation records. I blurted out, my voice stronger than I expected. "Your husband is destroying protected rainforest, and your son found out." The room exploded into chaos. Maxwell lunged toward me, but the company's legal counsel, Preston, yanked him backward. "He's not running away," I continued, heart hammering in my chest. "He's being held against his will in—" Maxwell broke free and clamped his hand over my mouth, dragging me backward as I kicked and struggled. Mrs. Reed collapsed to her knees, wailing a sound so primal it silenced the entire room. "Your son is alive." I managed to gasp as Maxwell's grip loosened for a fraction of a second. "I can prove it." The last thing I saw before security dragged me from the ballroom was Adriana Reed's eyes locking with mine, wide, desperate, and suddenly blazing with furious hope. If you're as shocked as everyone at the Reed Conservation Foundation's annual gala was that night, you'll definitely want to follow this story to its conclusion. Trust me when I say what happens next changed not only my life but the lives of hundreds of people connected to Maxwell Reed's empire. Hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss how this confrontation ends, because the truth about Liam Reed's disappearance is far more twisted than anyone imagined. My name is Phoebe Grant, 32 years old, former environmental photojournalist specializing in documenting endangered species habitats, current executive assistant to Maxwell Reed, CEO of Reed Conservation Foundation, and Reed Enterprises. At least, that's who I pretended to be for the past 18 months. The truth? I was hired 3 years ago to document Reed's supposed conservation efforts in the Brazilian rainforest. The foundation had received international acclaim for protecting over 200 0 acres from development and establishing breeding programs for endangered species. I remember my first day on the Reed estate, a sprawling property on the outskirts of Seattle, with its own greenhouse complex housing rare plants from around the world. I'd been escorted through gardens meticulously designed to showcase Maxwell's commitment to biodiversity. "Phoebe, Dad said you're staying in the East Wing guest house." A lanky teenager bounded down the stone steps, camera hanging from his neck. His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, just like his mother's. "I'm Liam, resident photography nerd and your unofficial tour guide." Over the next month, as I prepared for the Amazon expedition, Liam shadowed me. Unlike his polished, calculated father, Liam radiated genuine enthusiasm for conservation. He'd inherited his mother's passion for protecting wilderness, spending school breaks volunteering at wildlife rehabilitation centers. "Mom always fought for these causes," he told me one evening while we cataloged equipment. "Dad only got interested after they married, but now he's even more committed than she is." I noticed something when he said this, a slight hesitation, a flicker across his face. "You don't sound convinced," I observed, testing the waters. Liam glanced toward the door before whispering, "Sometimes the numbers don't add up. The reports say we're protecting certain species, but when I visit the sites, those animals aren't there." That conversation should have been my warning. Instead, it became the thread that, when pulled, unraveled everything. The Amazon expedition began with appropriate fanfare. Maxwell made sure conservation journalists documented our departure. 20 of us flew to Brazil. Scientists, photographers, Reed Foundation staff, and Liam, who'd convinced his father to let him join as my assistant during his summer break. For 2 weeks, everything proceeded according to plan. We photographed lush rainforest, cataloged species, and interviewed indigenous community members who praised the Reed Foundation's work. Then came the day that destroyed my life. Liam and I had separated from the main group to photograph a reported cluster of rare orchids. We'd hiked nearly 2 miles off trail when we heard machinery, heavy equipment grinding through forest. "There's nothing scheduled for this section," Liam said, checking the expedition map. We followed the noise until we reached a clearing that wasn't marked on any foundation documents. Bulldozers tore through pristine rainforest. Workers in hard hats operated drilling equipment while others loaded core samples into labeled containers. "This can't be right," Liam whispered, his face draining of color. I snapped photographs reflexively, my journalist instincts kicking in. The workers wore unmarked clothing, but their equipment cases bore serial numbers I carefully documented. We retreated before being spotted, hiking in stunned silence back toward base camp. That night, I researched the equipment numbers and discovered they belonged to mining exploration machinery, rented by a subsidiary company that traced back through 5 shell corporations to Reed Enterprises. The conservationist was mining the very land he claimed to protect. "We need to tell Mom," Liam said when I showed him my findings. His hands trembled as he examined my evidence. "She doesn't know. She can't know." We agreed to gather more proof before approaching Adriana. For the next 3 days, we documented discrepancies between the Foundation's public maps and actual activities. We discovered that protected areas had been quietly rezoned, indigenous communities relocated under false pretenses, and endangered species counts falsified. The night before we planned to return to Seattle, I slipped out to photograph documents in the expedition coordinator's tent. I had just finished when a hand clamped over my mouth. 2 security guards dragged me to Maxwell's private tent. He sat calmly at a folding desk, holding my camera's memory card between his fingers. "Ambitious, aren't you?" he said, voice soft but menacing. "Did you really think I wouldn't monitor my own son's communications?" My stomach plunged. "Where's Liam?" "Sleeping. Quite deeply, thanks to his evening tea." Maxwell's smile didn't touch his eyes. "By morning you'll be gone, and he'll understand what a mistake he made trusting you." He turned his laptop toward me. On screen were dozens of photographs showing me accepting envelopes from known poachers, stealing artifacts from indigenous lands, and handling protected wildlife, all expertly photoshopped. "These have already been sent to every major environmental publication, conservation, organization, and grant committee worldwide," he explained. "Your credibility is destroyed. Your career is over." "They won't believe these," I argued, but my voice wavered. "They already do. Check your email." He slid my phone toward me. My inbox overflowed with cancellations of upcoming assignments, demands to return grant money, and horrified messages from colleagues. "Why?" I asked, fighting back tears. "You're already wealthy. Why destroy protected land?" "Because under that land are rare earth minerals worth billions," he answered simply. "The Conservation Foundation is the perfect cover. No one questions our presence in restricted areas. Liam will tell everyone what we found." Maxwell's expression hardened. "My son will receive treatment for his unfortunate mental health episode. His obsession with conspiracy theories about his own father is clearly a cry for help." Ice spread through my veins. "You can't do that to your own child." "I'm protecting him from his own naivety," Maxwell countered. "Now, you have 2 choices. Leave quietly tonight and never contact my family again, or face criminal charges for the activities documented in those photos. The indigenous communities you've supposedly championed would be particularly interested in your theft of their sacred artifacts." 2 hours later, I was on a cargo plane heading back to civilization, my career and reputation in tatters, with no way to help Liam. For weeks afterward, I tried desperately to contact Adriana Reed, calling her charitable foundations and sending messages through every channel I could find. All were blocked or returned. I attempted to approach her at public events, only to be intercepted by security. Then came the news. Liam Reed, troubled teen son of conservationist Maxwell Reed, had run away after an argument with his parents, leaving behind a letter cutting ties with his hypocritical family. The press painted him as an unstable, ungrateful child, who couldn't handle the pressure of his family legacy. I knew the truth. Liam hadn't run away. He'd been silenced. For the next year, I survived by waiting tables and sleeping on friends' couches while obsessively tracking the Reed family. I watched as Maxwell accepted humanitarian awards while expanding mining operations under the guise of conservation. I saw Adriana make tearful pleas for information about her son on national television while Maxwell stood supportively beside her. What none of them knew was how far I would go to expose the truth. 18 months ago, I stopped being Phoebe Grant. After changing my appearance, darkening my naturally auburn hair to deep brown, wearing colored contacts to hide my green eyes, and adopting rectangular glasses, I created a new identity. Beth Wilson had an impeccable resume as an executive assistant with references that would check out thanks to friends who agreed to play the part of former employers. I spent months studying Maxwell Reed's company, identifying which department would put me closest to him while requiring minimal previous experience in that specific field. I practiced a different speaking pattern, slightly lowering my natural voice and adopting more formal speech patterns. I even learned to write with my non-dominant hand to change my handwriting. The first 3 times I applied for positions at Reed Enterprises, I was rejected. The 4th time, luck intervened. Maxwell's longtime assistant quit without notice following what office gossip called a complete breakdown. The HR department, desperate to fill the position, called me in for an interview. Walking into Reed Tower that first day felt like stepping into the lion's den wearing a suit made of raw meat. My hands trembled so badly, I had to clasp them behind my back as the HR director led me through security. I was certain Maxwell would recognize me instantly. He didn't even look up when I entered his office. "Your resume says you're organized and anticipate needs before they're expressed," he said, reviewing my fabricated credentials. My last assistant failed spectacularly at both. Don't make the same mistake. When he finally glanced up, I held my breath. His eyes narrowed slightly, and my heart nearly stopped. "Have we met before?" he asked. "I don't believe so, sir," I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. "I would remember meeting someone of your stature." He studied me for another excruciating moment before nodding. "Start tomorrow, 6 a.m. For 6 months, I became the model assistant. I arrived before Maxwell and left after him. I anticipated his needs, managed his calendar flawlessly, and earned his grudging approval, all while methodically searching for any information about Liam. Maxwell kept his most sensitive files locked in a private office adjacent to his main one, a room requiring biometric access that only he and the head of security could enter. But I discovered something interesting. The cleaning crew accessed this room using a master keycard after hours. It took 3 months of volunteering for late shifts before I could observe their routine, and another month before I could accidentally spill coffee on one cleaner's uniform, offering to finish her rounds while she changed. Those 15 minutes with the keycard gave me my first glimpse into Maxwell's secret operations. I couldn't download files without leaving digital fingerprints, but I photographed what I could with a tiny camera hidden in my watch. These fragments revealed references to something called Project Sentinel and a facility in Switzerland. That night, I dreamed of Liam for the first time in months. In my dream, he stood in a stark white room, pounding on a window, his mouth forming words I couldn't hear. I woke up gasping, more determined than ever. My next breakthrough came during a staff meeting when Preston, the legal counsel who had restrained Maxwell at the gala, mentioned upcoming changes to the foundation's structure. I noticed Maxwell shoot him a warning glance. After the meeting, they retreated to the private office, their voices rising enough that I could hear fragments about transfer of guardianship and permanent arrangement. When Preston emerged, his face was ashen. I followed him to the elevator under the pretense of delivering documents. "Are you all right?" I asked once we were alone. He loosened his tie, clearly shaken. "Fine. Just ethical disagreements. About the foundation restructuring?" I ventured. His eyes snapped to mine, suddenly suspicious. "That's confidential." "Of course. I just handle so many of Mr. Reed's documents, it's hard to keep track of what's common knowledge." The elevator stopped, and Preston stepped out. He hesitated, then turned back. "Beth, how well do you know Maxwell Reed?" "Only what everyone knows. Brilliant businessman, dedicated conservationist, devoted husband." Something flashed across Preston's face. Disgust, perhaps, or guilt. Sometimes appearances are carefully constructed. Before I could respond, the doors closed between us. 2 days later, Preston didn't come to work. His assistant received a terse email stating he'd taken an indefinite leave of absence for health reasons. His office was cleaned out overnight. When I mentioned his absence to Maxwell, he merely said, "Preston couldn't handle the pressure. Shame." That evening, I followed Maxwell to a private dinner with the company's head of security, Andre. I watched from a nearby table as they spoke in hushed tones, Maxwell occasionally glancing around the restaurant. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I read Maxwell's lips when he clearly said, "Permanent solution." My blood ran cold. Was Preston's sudden departure connected to Liam? Had he discovered something that threatened Maxwell? I needed an ally, and Preston might be my only hope. It took me a week to track him down. His apartment sat empty, his phone disconnected. Finally, a barista at his favorite coffee shop mentioned he'd talked about staying at his sister's cabin near Lake Chelan. I drove 3 hours that weekend, finding the remote cabin tucked among pine trees. When Preston opened the door, his eyes widened in alarm. "How did you find me?" he demanded, glancing nervously over my shoulder. "I need to know about Liam Reed," I said, ignoring his question. He tried to close the door, but I jammed my foot in the gap. "Please, I know Maxwell is hiding something terrible. You don't understand what you're getting into," Preston hissed. "He destroys people who cross him. I know exactly what he's capable of," I replied, meeting his gaze. "More than you can imagine." Something in my expression must have convinced him. He stepped back, letting me enter. Inside, papers covered every surface. Legal documents, medical reports, financial records. Preston had been busy during his health leave. "I've been Maxwell's attorney for 11 years, he said, pouring himself a drink with shaking hands. "I've justified many questionable actions as business necessities. But what he's doing to his own son, I can't be part of it anymore." "Where is Liam?" I asked, my heart pounding. Preston pulled out a file. "Officially, receiving treatment at an exclusive mental health facility in Switzerland called Sentinel Wellness Center. In reality, he's being held against his will, drugged into compliance, and prevented from communicating with anyone outside." Why would Maxwell do this to his own child? Because Liam threatened to expose everything, not just the illegal mining operations, but the tax fraud, the bribes to government officials, the environmental data falsification. Maxwell built his entire empire on lies, and Liam had proof. "How do you know all this?" Preston wouldn't meet my eyes. "Because I helped create the legal framework that made it possible. Maxwell convinced me Liam was unstable, a danger to himself. I prepared the guardianship documents giving Maxwell complete control over his son's care and finances until he turns 30. And now? Now I've seen the medical reports. The treatments they're administering would make any normal person appear unstable. They're deliberately keeping him confused and disoriented." I leaned forward. "Preston, I need your help to free him. It's impossible. The facility has security like a fortress. Maxwell pays millions to ensure his son stays contained." "Nothing is impossible," I insisted. "I need documentation, facility layouts, staff information, anything you have." Preston stared at me. "Who are you really?" No executive assistant would risk everything like this. I took a deep breath and revealed my true identity. His shock turned to understanding, then determination. "I'll help you," he said finally, "but we need to be careful. Maxwell has already sent people looking for me." As if summoned by his words, headlights swept across the cabin windows. Car doors slammed outside. "Back door," Preston whispered, grabbing a laptop and flash drive. "Take these and run. I'll stall them." I slipped out just as someone pounded on the front door. Racing through dark woods, I heard shouting behind me, then a sound that stopped my heart, a single gunshot echoing through the trees. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, hidden a quarter-mile away. With trembling hands, I started the engine and sped away. Preston's laptop and drive hidden under my seat. The local news reported Preston's death as a hunting accident the next day. Maxwell organized a lavish memorial service and delivered a moving eulogy about friendship and loyalty. I watched from the back row, swallowing my rage, knowing the truth. That night, I opened Preston's laptop. Password protected, of course, but he'd included a sticky note inside the case with a simple clue: your client's son's birthday. After 3 attempts, I was in. What I found changed everything. Not only did Preston have detailed information about Sentinel Wellness Center, he had been secretly communicating with Adriana Reed for months, feeding her doubts about her son's disappearance. The files revealed a shocking truth. Adriana Reed wasn't the oblivious, grieving mother I'd assumed her to be. According to Preston's notes, she had been investigating her husband for months, gathering her own evidence about the foundation's activities and her son's sudden mental health crisis. Preston had been secretly providing her with documents while pretending loyalty to Maxwell. His final message to her, sent the day before his death, read, "A new ally will contact you soon. Trust her completely." He'd been planning to introduce us before Maxwell's men found him. Scrolling through Preston's files revealed something else. Surveillance photos of Liam at Sentinel Wellness Center. My hands trembled as I opened them. After 3 years, I finally saw him again. The images showed a gaunt version of the vibrant young man I'd known. His eyes appeared vacant, his movements captured mid-shuffle across a sterile courtyard. The timestamp was from just 2 weeks earlier. He was alive, but barely recognizable. Sleep evaded me that night as I pored over facility blueprints, staff rotations, and security protocols. Sentinel presented itself publicly as an exclusive rehabilitation center for wealthy clients, but Preston's notes exposed its darker purpose, a detention facility disguised as a wellness retreat where inconvenient relatives could be stashed away indefinitely under the guise of treatment. By morning, I knew what I had to do, contact Adriana Reed, but approaching the wife of the man who wanted me, silenced, carried enormous risk. For 3 days, I observed her routine from a distance. Unlike her husband, Adriana maintained a predictable schedule, daily walks through Volunteer Park, charity meetings on Tuesdays, and weekly Thursday appointments at an exclusive spa. I chose the park for our first meeting. Wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, I positioned myself on a bench along her regular route. When she approached, I stood directly in her path. "Mrs. Reed," I said quietly, "Preston sent me." She froze, her security detail several paces behind. "Who are you?" "Someone who knows where your son is being held." Her composure cracked momentarily before she regained control. Without looking back at her security, she said, "Give me 2 minutes," then gestured for me to walk alongside her. "Preston is dead," she whispered once we were out of earshot. "I know. I was there the night it happened." Her steps faltered. "Maxwell?" I nodded. "Preston gave me everything before they killed him. I know about Sentinel. I have recent photos of Liam." The carefully controlled mask she wore in public shattered. Her hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob. "He's alive? You've seen him?" "Photos only. Mrs. Reed, I need you to trust me." "Why should I? I don't even know you." I took a deep breath and removed my glasses. 3 years ago, I was Phoebe Grant. I was with Liam when we discovered your husband's illegal mining operation in the Amazon. Recognition dawned in her eyes, followed quickly by suspicion. "Maxwell said you manipulated my son, that you were caught selling information to competitors." "All lies," I interrupted. "Your husband destroyed my reputation to silence me, just like he's silenced your son." Her security detail was growing restless, moving closer. I pressed a burner phone into her hand. "I'll call you tonight at 9. If you want to save Liam, answer." I walked away before her security could reach us, disappearing into the crowded park. I half expected police at my apartment door that evening, but nothing happened. At 9 precisely, I called the burner phone. She answered on the first ring. "I want proof. Check your email." I'd sent her 3 things. A photograph of Liam and me in the Amazon before everything fell apart, a recent surveillance image of him at Sentinel, and a portion of Preston's notes detailing Maxwell's elaborate scheme. The line went silent as she reviewed them. When she finally spoke, her voice had transformed, steel replacing vulnerability. "What do you need from me?" "Access to your husband's private accounts, travel itinerary for the next month, and a DNA sample to prove I'm acting on Liam's behalf when we reach Sentinel." "That's all?" "For now. I've spent 3 years searching for my son while sleeping next to the man who took him from me," she said, her voice eerily calm. "I'll get you everything you need and more." True to her word, Adriana became my most valuable ally. While maintaining a flawless facade as Maxwell's devoted wife, she methodically gathered intelligence. Her position gave her access to information I could never obtain as a mere assistant. We established a secure communication system, meeting and changing locations every few days. She revealed that she'd suspected Maxwell's involvement in Liam's disappearance from the beginning, but lacked proof. The perfect conservation family image they projected was a carefully crafted lie. Their marriage had been fractured for years. "Maxwell threatened to destroy my environmental foundation if I ever left him," she explained during one of our meetings. "It's the only meaningful work I've ever done." Then Liam disappeared, and leaving became impossible. "Why didn't you go to the authorities?" I asked. With what evidence? Maxwell controls the local police chief, 2 federal judges, and has a senator in his pocket. Who would believe me against the great humanitarian Maxwell Reed? Working together, we pieced together the full extent of Maxwell's operation. The Conservation Foundation served as the perfect front, allowing his company's exclusive access to protected lands rich in minerals and timber. Governments welcomed him with open arms, indigenous communities trusted him, and environmental organizations celebrated him. Meanwhile, his mining subsidiaries extracted billions in resources from the very lands he claimed to protect. 2 weeks after our first meeting, Adriana delivered the final piece we needed: Maxwell's complete travel schedule. He would be attending an environmental summit in Norway for 4 days the following month, giving us our window to act. But just as our plan took shape, disaster struck. I arrived at work one morning to find Maxwell's private office door ajar, an unprecedented security breach. Inside, a team of IT specialists huddled around his computer system. Data breach, one explained when I inquired. Someone's been accessing Mr. Reed's private servers. My stomach dropped. Had our digital footprints been discovered? Maxwell stormed in moments later, his face contorted with rage. Find whoever did this, he snarled at the security team. Check every employee, every contractor. Someone's been stealing information. His eyes fell on me, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he knew everything, but he merely barked, "Cancel all my appointments today, and tell security to double the detail on my wife." That night, Adriana called from a new number. "He knows something's happening," she whispered. "He's watching me constantly." 2 new security guards followed me all day. "Did you access his private server?" I asked. "No, I used the passwords on the standalone systems like we discussed." Her voice quavered. "Phoebe, he came to my room last night, the first time in over a year. He asked if I'd been in contact with anyone unusual recently." My blood ran cold. "What did you tell him?" "That the only unusual contact was the private investigator he hired as a publicity stunt." Bitterness edged her words. "He seemed satisfied, but I don't think we have much time." She was right. The next morning, I arrived to find security conducting employee interviews. Each staff member was being questioned about their recent activities and access to company information. When my turn came, 2 stone-faced security officers led me to a conference room where Andre, the head of security, waited with a file folder. "Miss Wilson," he began pleasantly, "how long have you worked for Mr. Reed?" 18 months, I answered, forcing my voice to remain steady. "And in that time, have you ever accessed information not directly related to your duties?" "No." Andre slid a paper across the table. A log of after-hours building access showing my key card had been used multiple times during late evenings. "I often work late to prepare for Mr. Reed's early meetings," I explained, "including accessing the executive floor at 11:42 p.m. last Tuesday." A trap. I hadn't been in the building that night. "I was home last Tuesday evening," I said carefully. Andre's smile tightened. "Your keycard says otherwise. Someone had used my credentials. The walls were closing in. Perhaps there's been a system error," I suggested. "Or someone borrowed my card. I sometimes leave it on my desk during lunch." Andre made a note without responding. "We're conducting background checks on all employees with access to sensitive information. Standard procedure." My carefully constructed identity wouldn't withstand intense scrutiny. I needed to accelerate our timeline. I texted Adriana as soon as I left the interview. "They're on to us. We move tonight." Her response came hours later. "Can't. He's taking me to the mountain house for the weekend. Armed guards everywhere." My mind raced. The mountain house was Maxwell's fortress, a remote compound with state-of-the-art security. If he suspected Adriana, taking her there could mean he planned to deal with her away from witnesses. I had no choice. I sent one final message, Code Amber, our emergency protocol. That evening, I stayed late at the office, waiting until most employees had departed. Using the master keycard I'd secretly duplicated months earlier, I accessed Maxwell's private office. I had 20 minutes before the next security sweep. Working quickly, I downloaded files from his computer onto encrypted drives and photographed physical documents. As I prepared to leave, my elbow knocked a framed photo from his desk. Maxwell, Adriana, and Liam at a foundation gala years earlier. The glass cracked as it hit the floor. When I picked it up, I noticed something odd, a small key taped to the back of the frame, hidden by the stand. On impulse, I pocketed it before replacing the photo. I was halfway to the elevator when alarms blared throughout the building. Red emergency lights flashed as security doors began automatically locking. Someone had triggered a security breach protocol. I ran for the stairs instead, descending as quickly as possible. 2 floors down, I heard doors banging open above me, security in pursuit. Reaching the parking garage, I headed not for my car, which would surely be watched, but for the service entrance used by delivery trucks. I slipped out just as guards flooded the garage. 3 blocks away, a nondescript sedan pulled alongside me, the passenger window lowered to reveal Adriana Reed. "Get in," she ordered. "We have 12 hours before he realizes I'm gone." "How did you escape the mountain house?" I asked as I slid into the car. She pulled away from the curb, driving with unexpected skill through evening traffic. "I've been planning my escape for years, waiting for the right moment. Tonight, I finally drugged his whiskey, something I should have done long ago." Her voice was different, harder, more determined than I'd ever heard before. "The security guards believe I'm sleeping in my private suite with strict instructions not to be disturbed." A cold smile played across her lips. "By morning, they'll discover I'm gone, along with evidence of Maxwell's crimes delivered anonymously to the FBI. "You reported him?" "Preston did, posthumously. He arranged for everything to be sent if he missed 3 consecutive weekly check-ins. Maxwell never suspected his trusted attorney had built a dead man's switch." As we sped toward the private airfield where a chartered plane waited, Adriana handed me a small velvet pouch. "I found this in Maxwell's safe. I think you should have it." Inside was a tarnished compass with a faded inscription, "To find your way home, L." I recognized it immediately, the gift I'd given Liam when we first began exploring the Amazon together. "He kept it as a trophy," Adriana said quietly, "along with other items from people he's destroyed." The compass needle trembled in my palm, pointing steadily north, toward Switzerland, toward Liam. "We're coming," I whispered to the compass. "Hold on, just a little longer." As our plane lifted into the night sky, neither of us could have imagined the horror awaiting us at Sentinel Wellness Center, or the lengths to which Maxwell Reed would go to protect his darkest secrets. The 8-hour flight to Zurich gave us time to finalize our strategy. Using Preston's files, Adriana and I pored over Sentinel's security protocols, staff rotations, and facility layout. The center sat isolated on a private alpine plateau, accessible only by a single winding road or helicopter. It housed 20 patients, wealthy individuals whose families paid extraordinary sums to keep them contained. "The staff believes these are legitimate mental health cases," Adriana explained, reviewing employee records. "Only the director and security chief know the truth, which makes most of them innocent," I noted. "We need to focus on extracting Liam, without harming staff who think they're helping patients." The plan we developed was risky but potentially effective. Adriana would arrive openly as the concerned mother, using her considerable influence to demand an inspection visit. Meanwhile, I would enter through service channels using credentials Preston had prepared before his death. "What if Maxwell has already alerted them?" I asked as our plane began its descent. Adriana's expression hardened. "Then we moved to contingency plan. I've spent 3 years building a network of journalists who trust me. One call, and Sentinel's secrets are exposed worldwide. That could take too long to help Liam." She reached into her handbag and removed a small handgun. "Then we do this the direct way." I stared at the weapon. "You know how to use that?" "I grew up on a Montana ranch before I became an environmental activist." Her smile was grim. Maxwell never bothered to learn that part of my history. We landed at dawn, greeted by slate-gray skies and icy mountain air. A discreet luxury car waited at a private terminal, another arrangement from Preston's contingency plans. As we wound through spectacular alpine scenery, the beauty around us stood in stark contrast to our mission. Sentinel Wellness Center appeared on the horizon after an hour's drive, a sprawling modernist structure of glass and stone that resembled an exclusive resort more than a detention facility. Security was subtly integrated into the design, cameras disguised as lighting fixtures, motion sensors hidden among garden sculptures, and a perimeter fence camouflaged by strategic landscaping. We parked at a scenic overlook half a mile from the entrance to finalize our approach. "Remember," Adriana said, checking her appearance one last time, "I'll create a distraction in the administrative wing. You have 30 minutes to locate Liam and reach the service exit on the east side. And if he's too sedated to move?" She handed me a small case. "Adrenaline injection, enough to temporarily counteract whatever they're giving him, according to the medical contact Preston trusted. 30 minutes," I repeated, memorizing the facility map one final time. We embraced briefly before separating, Adriana continuing toward the main entrance in our rental car, while I circled through dense forest to approach from the service area. The employee entrance was exactly where Preston's blueprints indicated, a nondescript door beside loading docks where supply trucks made deliveries. I waited behind a stand of pines, watching staff arrive for the morning shift. Most wore pale blue uniforms and displayed ID badges on lanyards. When a group of 3 approached, chatting casually about weekend plans, I timed my emergence to blend with them. Preston's forged ID already hanging around my neck. Heart pounding, I nodded at the security guard, who barely glanced at my badge before waving our group through. Inside, the facility's true nature became apparent. Despite designer furnishings and artwork adorning public spaces, security measures were omnipresent, reinforced doors with biometric locks, staff wearing discreet earpieces, and multiple monitoring stations. I navigated toward the residential wing, following directions from the facility map. According to Preston's files, Liam was housed in room 307, classified as a high-security therapeutic space for patients with elopement risk. The clock was ticking. Adriana would have reached reception by now, demanding to see the facility director. Soon, alarms would sound as she created her diversion. I entered a staff break room, found an unattended medication cart, and began pushing it confidently down the corridor. Medical staff rarely faced questioning in such facilities. They were expected to move throughout restricted areas. Approaching the residential wing required passing through a secure checkpoint. I held my breath as the guard examined my ID. Then, the medication chart on my cart. New? He asked, eyes narrowing slightly. Transferred from Zurich, I replied, mimicking the slight accent I'd heard from other staff. Still, learning the layout, he studied me another moment before nodding toward the biometric scanner. My pulse raced. This was the weakness in our plan. Preston had obtained security protocols but couldn't provide actual fingerprint access. Before I could panic, the guard's radio crackled. All security personnel report to administration immediately. VIP visitor situation. Adriana had arrived. The guard hesitated, torn between protocol and the urgent summons. Systems glitching again, he muttered, overriding the biometric requirement with his master keycard. Go ahead, they need all hands in admin. Relief flooded through me as the doors slid open. I pushed my cart forward, waiting until the guard disappeared before abandoning it and moving quickly toward room 307. The residential corridor was eerily silent. No voices, no movement, just the hum of air conditioning. Each door featured a small digital display showing patient name, status, and medication schedule. Most read, in-room therapy, or resting. Liam's display showed, meditation session, with a medication dose scheduled in 20 minutes. I needed to move fast. His door required another keycard swipe. I tried the one I'd lifted from the unattended cart, holding my breath as the light flashed. First red, then mercifully green. I pushed the door open slowly, bracing myself for what I might find. The room resembled a luxury hotel suite with one disturbing difference. There were no handles on the inside of doors or windows. Sunlight streamed through reinforced glass, illuminating minimalist furniture and artwork clearly selected to create a calming environment. In a meditation alcove sat Liam Reed, cross-legged on a mat, eyes closed, breathing rhythmically. He looked both like and unlike the young man I'd known, thinner, paler, his once vibrant energy subdued to eerie stillness. Liam, I whispered, approaching slowly. His eyes remained closed. I've completed today's mindfulness exercise, Dr. Richter. I'm ready for my medication. The flat, rehearsed quality of his voice sent chills down my spine. Liam, it's me, Phoebe. His eyes opened slowly, pupils dilated from whatever drugs coursed through his system. He stared through me, rather than at me, expression vacant. Phoebe Grant doesn't exist anymore, he recited mechanically. She manipulated me and betrayed my father's trust. My perception was compromised by her influence. Horror washed over me. They'd been systematically erasing his memories, replacing them with Maxwell's narrative. That's what they want you to believe, I said urgently, kneeling before him. But you know the truth. We found the illegal mining operation. We discovered your father's real business. His expression remained blank, but something flickered in his eyes. Confusion, perhaps recognition. Your mother is here, I continued, checking my watch. 20 minutes had already passed. We've come to take you home. Mother visits on approved dates only, he replied automatically. Father says she's too emotional for frequent contact. I reached for the compass in my pocket, pressing it into his palm. You gave me this before they took you away. Remember? You said it was your grandfather's, a man who taught you to always seek the truth. His fingers closed around the tarnished metal. For a moment, he stared at it uncomprehendingly. Then his hand began to tremble. They said, he began, voice cracking. They told me I imagined everything, that I had a psychotic break. They lied, I said firmly. Everything we discovered was real. Your father has been keeping you here to silence you. Tears filled his eyes, the first genuine emotion breaking through the pharmaceutical haze. Phoebe, is it really you? Before I could answer, alarms blared throughout the facility. An automated voice announced, security protocol activated. All patients return to rooms. All staff implement containment procedures. Something had gone wrong with Adriana's distraction. We need to move now, I urged, helping Liam to his feet. He swayed unsteadily, leaning heavily against me. Can you walk? They increased my medication yesterday, he murmured, struggling to focus. Said I was becoming resistant to treatment. I retrieved the adrenaline injection from my pocket. This will help temporarily, but it will be unpleasant. Do you trust me? His eyes, clouded but increasingly aware, met mine. Always did. I administered the injection, watching as the powerful stimulant fought against the sedatives in his system. His breathing quickened, pupils contracting as adrenaline flooded his bloodstream. That's intense, he gasped, straightening as artificial energy surged through him. It won't last long, I warned. We need to reach the service exit. We moved into the hallway, finding it empty as staff responded to the facility-wide alert. According to our plan, we had 10 minutes to reach the east exit where Adriana would meet us after creating her diversion. We managed 2 corridors before encountering the first obstacle, a nurse rushing in the opposite direction who stopped abruptly upon seeing us. Patient 307, she exclaimed, reaching for her radio. You shouldn't be, Liam reacted with unexpected swiftness, grabbing her radio and pulling her into an empty room. I'm sorry, he told the startled woman as I secured the door. You're just doing your job, but they've been lying to you about me. We continued our escape, using service corridors to avoid main hallways. Liam moved with increasing coordination, as the adrenaline counteracted years of chemical suppression. With each step, awareness seemed to return to his eyes. 3 years, he murmured as we descended a maintenance stairwell. They stole 3 years of my life. Focus, I urged. We'll have time for that later. The service exit appeared ahead, an emergency door that would trigger alarms when opened, but would lead directly to the rendezvous point. According to our plan, Adriana should be waiting with the car. I pushed the door open, bracing for the alarm. Instead, silence. The emergency system had been disabled. Outside, alpine sunshine momentarily blinded us. When my vision cleared, I froze in horror. Maxwell Reed stood beside our rental car, arm wrapped around Adriana's throat, a gun pressed to her temple. 3 security guards flanked him, weapons drawn. Touching reunion, Maxwell said coldly. Did you really think I wouldn't have contingencies at my own facility? Liam stiffened beside me, the fog in his mind clearing enough to recognize the danger. Father, he said, voice stronger than I'd heard since entering his room. Let her go. My son, the environmental crusader, Maxwell replied with mock affection. Still fighting imaginary battles, I see. Your illness makes these paranoid conspiracies seem so real to you. Stop lying, Adriana gasped against his grip. It's over, Maxwell. Everything's been exposed. His arm tightened around her neck. Nothing is over until I say it, Island. The helicopter is waiting. We're all taking a little family trip to discuss this situation privately. The coldness in his voice made his intentions clear. None of us would survive that discussion. Security breach in West Wing. Multiple intruders. A voice suddenly blared through the facility's external speakers. All personnel respond immediately. Confusion crossed Maxwell's face. This wasn't part of our plan. The momentary distraction was all Adriana needed. She slammed her elbow into Maxwell's ribs with surprising force, simultaneously twisting the gun away from her head. As he doubled over, she wrenched free of his grasp. Chaos erupted. The security guards hesitated, unsure whether to pursue Adriana or maintain focus on Liam and me. That split-second uncertainty proved fatal to their mission. From the forest edge, figures emerged. A tactical team in unmarked black uniforms, weapons trained on Maxwell's security detail. Federal police, "Drop your weapons," commanded a voice through a megaphone. Maxwell's face contorted with rage and disbelief. "What is this? Who authorized?" "Maxwell Reed," announced the team leader, approaching with handcuffs. "You're under arrest for environmental crimes, fraud, false imprisonment, and conspiracy to commit murder." As the officers secured Maxwell and his security team, a familiar figure stepped from the tactical unit, Preston. "You're dead," Maxwell sputtered, staring in shock. "Reports of my death were strategic," Preston replied calmly. "After your men came for me, the Federal Environmental Crimes Task Force suggested I disappear while they built their case. Understanding dawned on me. The cabin shooting, staged," Preston confirmed. "We needed Maxwell to believe he'd eliminated the threat while we gathered final evidence." Adriana rushed to Liam, embracing him as tears streamed down both their faces. "My boy," she whispered. "My beautiful boy." I stood apart, watching their reunion with a complex mixture of emotions. After 3 years of single-minded focus on exposing Maxwell and rescuing Liam, the sudden victory felt almost unreal. Preston approached, offering a satellite phone. "There's someone who wants to speak with you." I accepted it cautiously. "Hello, Miss Grant?" A woman's authoritative voice came through. "This is Director Helena Reeves of the Environmental Crimes Division. I believe we owe you an apology and considerable thanks." "For what?" 3 years ago, we received evidence against you that appeared conclusive. We now know those materials were falsified by Maxwell Reed. Your name has been officially cleared, and your professional reputation restored. The vindication I'd fought so long to achieve had finally arrived, delivered matter-of-factly over a satellite connection. "There's more," the director continued. "The evidence you and Preston compiled has exposed a global network of environmental fraud. We've frozen assets worth billions and prevented destruction of over 2 million acres of protected habitat." As Maxwell was led away in handcuffs, raging impotently against his fate, I finally approached Liam and Adriana. "Thank you," Adriana said, grasping my hands, "for never giving up." Liam, still struggling against the effects of long-term medication, studied my face with increasingly clear eyes. "You changed your appearance," he observed. "Had to become someone else to find you." His hand reached out tentatively, as if confirming I was real. "I remembered you, even when they said you weren't real." I held on to that. As medical personnel arrived to evaluate Liam's condition, I stepped back, suddenly uncertain of my place in this family reunion. My mission was complete. What now? Liam seemed to read my thoughts. "Don't disappear again," he said, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. "Promise me." Before I could respond, his eyes rolled back and he collapsed, the adrenaline wearing off, his system crashing from the chemical roller coaster. "He needs immediate medical attention," a paramedic announced, loading him onto a stretcher. "Years of these medications will require careful detoxification." Adriana squeezed my hand before climbing into the medical helicopter with her son. "This isn't goodbye," she promised. "We'll find you when he's stabilized." I watched the helicopter lift away, carrying Liam toward proper medical care and the beginning of a long recovery. Preston joined me as the thrum of rotors faded into alpine silence. "Was this your plan all along?" I asked. "Not entirely," he admitted. "We hoped to build the case without involving you or Adriana directly. But when Maxwell increased security and moved to silence me, we needed to accelerate everything. So I was what, bait? A catalyst," Preston corrected. "Your determination gave Adriana the courage to finally act against her husband. And without you, we would never have located Liam or gathered enough evidence for these charges to stick." 6 months later, I sat in a federal courthouse as Maxwell Reed was sentenced to 27 years for his crimes. His empire had collapsed spectacularly, with assets seized and redirected to legitimate environmental restoration projects. Adriana had transformed her foundation into a whistleblower protection organization, providing resources for those exposing environmental crimes worldwide. She nodded to me from across the courtroom as the judge delivered the sentence. Beside me sat Liam, still thin but clear-eyed and increasingly himself again. His recovery had been arduous, with withdrawal symptoms and psychological trauma requiring intensive therapy. But his determination proved stronger than the chemicals that had suppressed it. As we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed around us, shouting questions about the sensational case that had dominated headlines for months. "Just one statement," Liam announced, his voice steady. Taking my hand, he continued, "Today proves that truth eventually surfaces, no matter how deeply it's buried. My father believed wealth and power could silence anyone. He was wrong. Later that evening, we walked along Lake Geneva's shore, the water reflecting a spectacular sunset. "What will you do now?" Liam asked. "Return to wildlife photography?" I considered the question I'd been avoiding. "I'm not sure that person exists anymore." "Then who are you now?" The question hung between us as I watched light play across the water. "Someone who understands how fragile truth can be," I finally answered, "and how hard we must fight to protect it." He took my hand, the same compass I'd given him years ago now hanging from a chain around his neck. "Whatever you decide, I hope our paths stay connected." As alpine twilight deepened around us, I realized my revenge hadn't taken the form I'd imagined. I hadn't destroyed Maxwell Reed. His own crimes had accomplished that. Instead, I'd helped restore what he'd tried to erase: truth, justice, and the bond between a mother and son. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't about destroying your enemy, but rebuilding everything they tried to take from you, only stronger than before. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like and subscribe for more tales of justice and redemption. Share your thoughts in the comments about what you might have done in Phoebe's situation. Would you have risked everything for truth, or chosen a different path? Your support helps these important stories reach those who need to hear them most.